You will survive, and they will continue to grow up.
And you'll continue to worry about
Control, and then they'll start having children for you to worry about also.
You will love yourself going to tax function, because my son is 34.
Yeah. Is your
Karen?
So it's hard in the mom.
She's ready.
You're ready there, Mayor.
Really nice, guys.
Takes a village.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Independent City Council meeting. It is Tuesday, June 11th at 6:30 in the evening. Thanks, everybody, for being in here. Appreciate it. Change the agenda. Council members will be doing an emergency contract at the last item under new business today. It'll be 7.6, and we'll explain it then, but we're going to be doing that. Let the record show that everybody's here, and I want everybody to please remember that we are on an owl here, and there's no microphones, so they say they don't have any problem hearing me, but if you're a soft speaker, please project, and we'll go from there. Council members, we have minutes from a work session on the 14th of May and a regular meeting and work session on the 28th. Do they meet with your approval?
I move to approve both documents as received.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much. We're going to go to visitor comments now. Reminding visitor comments, a maximum of 5 minutes. Staff does time this for us, and this is a chance for council to listen. We don't react back and forth. We just sit and listen. So thank you. And Sheck from Telemark News in Salem.
Hi, Telemark News is registered corporation news outlet here in Independence, just to be clear. So, good evening, councilors. As someone who considers herself a part of the Independence community, not only a member of the local press, I want to avoid expending tax dollars unnecessarily that affect the city. It appears to be suffering under financial duress, threatening closure of the Library Parks Museum. I'm the owner and operator of Telemark News, a registered media corporation, a news outlet that has been publishing here since 2016. I advocate for transparency, so I want to provide it myself. Though anonymity is given to those who contact the state about possible waste of tax dollars, I wish to disclose that I have filed an inquiry with the Oregon Secretary of State's office about what I see as my over-reliance on the independent city recorder to answer public records requests due to a violation of city policy. The city has refused to acknowledge or answer media requests for information for months and months. A week ago, I saw Mayor McCardle at the county courthouse. I reminded him that I had previously spoken to both him and the president of the city council, Marilyn Morton, about this. Both identified city manager Kenna West, since she supervises the communications coordinator. I told him that I felt it was time to take my concerns a step further, and so I did, Mayor. I believe you are aware of it too. In December, I stood before the city council, all of you, to point out that the city policy appears to guarantee your communications coordinator will answer media inquiries. He has not done so despite phone calls, letters, and emails. The city's external media policy seems clear and therefore being violated. I just checked it today. City Manager West has shared her disappointment in my coverage. She made 2 trips to the county newspaper office to try to oust me from the pages of the Polk County Itemizer Observer, which printed an indie page for Tramark News in the pandemic. The then publisher declined her demand. The conversation, I was present, was off the record and will stay that way. But Ms. West and the two staffers, including the communications coordinator and the public works director, were asked to leave. I later received an apology for her raised voice, and it included what I interpret as an assurance of future responses to Tramark News inquiries from the communications coordinator. I believe both the city policy and the city manager's email apology belong in the public record, and I have copies that I will now give to the city recorder. Thank you.
The next person to speak is Patrick Bootman. Oh, Ann, were you done? Excuse me? Yeah, thank you. Patrick? Good evening, welcome to council.
Thank you. Patrick Fugman, 633 Osprey Lane. You've got some pretty heady things tonight, and this may seem a little bit trite to you, but it means a lot to several of us that are here. I want to start my comments with a compliment that the hanging baskets that have been put up around the city just make the city just beautiful, positive, and inviting, you know, particularly on all the side streets, and also what a lovely city. Now, we have a request that many of us that are here tonight use the Riverwalk, walking bicycles, baby strollers, people from Independence, Monmouth, even Dallas. We have some friends that come over in South Salem. There's a plan to close the Riverwalk between the pedestrian bridge and the dog park for 3 months. What we're asking is for city public works, if they could work with the contractor to keep access open during this construction period. Maybe the wood chips like were down further down when the water line went through, but it's a real asset for the city, and we'd like very much for you to see if it'd be possible to keep that open rather than close it for 3 months. Thank you very much.
Thank you for taking the time to come in, I do appreciate it. Mark Winningham, did I get that right?
You did.
Thank you, sir. Good evening and welcome to City Council.
Thank you. It's my first time here.
Well, welcome.
Yeah. So I'm really kind of backing up what Patrick said. I'm a resident of Independence, and I live at the Landing. And I walk daily on the trail, as do many others. I don't know what the numbers are, if they've ever been tracked, but my guess is there's 100 or more people a day at least on that trail. And it's not only good for us human two-legged, but four-legged creatures. There's just as many of them on the trail, and doing a bypass up to the road, to the main street would just be very disruptive to that. And so my thought is that there's perhaps some way that the contractor could keep a pathway open either around or through, or however to through it. And one thought I had was the existing concrete is going to be coming out, I assume, near where the drop-off is, and we could mark that and put a little fence along the other side too, and there'd be a perfect pathway, and then they could pull it out when they're ready to connect them in, and maybe just have a few days closed instead of 30 days or 90 days, whichever. Anyway, that's my thought. And again, I'd like to comment that Independence is a wonderful place, and thank all of you for all your work and effort you put in to make it such an inviting place to live.
Thank you so much, appreciate it. Okay, we're gonna move forward with my report, under Mayor's report here. I have to get my notes here. Well, first of all, as most of you all know, we suffered a loss and just a few days ago. Our good friend, a wonderful person in the community, Nancy Lodge, passed away. She was a counselor for 16 years. She served on our budget committee, on the library committee, involved with the Ash Creek Arts Center, with the Smile Program. She was involved in all sorts of stuff. A wonderful human being, and I had the privilege of, she sat next to me for 16 years, and she was a very good friend. She cared a lot about our community. We will all miss her. There'll be an event later on this summer to recognize her life. I spoke with her husband, Mike. He and she also really appreciated the cards and notes that that folks provided to her, and some people here were able to actually visit with her. It made such a difference, and she loved this place. And so we will not forget. We will remember, and just the things that she stood for, the things that she helped make happen. Let's all try to take those and move those forward. So with that, this last week I had a chance to visit with members of the Polk County Commissioners, talking to them about Highway 51 and 22, continuing to emphasize our continued interest in moving that project along. It is a real, it's a challenge. It started off at like $20 million. It's with all the frontage roads and everything else. Well, it's hundreds of millions of dollars to do the project now, and county is, Commissioner Morthorst is working really hard with ODOT, and a number of us also are working that. Related, the COG, the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments Legislative Committee has been talking about transportation, and we have put an official request in for the Oregon Transportation Commission, who is holding road shows to talk about what the needs of transportation are in different parts of the state. They seem to forget that the Mid-Willamette Valley, I know, they can have meetings at the Capitol building, but that's not the same as coming to either a county facility or a city. I know we've offered our location, so is Kaiser and many others, to help them understand from we locals the importance of a number of transportation projects, including Highway 51 and 22. So just wanted to let you know about that. Also coming up in August, there's going to be an opportunity for elected officials to meet with legislative and congressional candidates in August to talk about what the needs of cities, counties, and local governments are, because there are a lot of new folks that are going to go to the Capitol building. There are a lot of folks that are currently there that need a little extra understanding of the needs of local governments. And so that will be coming up. On a little bit more fun, I had the pleasure of, on Saturday morning, of going over to Central High School and judging the Power Piers car show. Now that doesn't, it seems like, okay, a car show, but this is the first, because the seniors had all graduated the night before. And so that day was the first day that that junior class was running an event. And it was a great one. And you know, sometimes we worry about what's happening with young people. Well, it was great to see wonderful young people engaged, doing stuff. And so it was truly a pleasure to do that. So, you know, we all have yin and yang, and that was, I'm not sure if that was the yin or the yang, but it was a nice opportunity to work with a number of young people. Ms. West, I think it's you for city manager report, and you can just do it from right there rather than getting up and having to go to the podium tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. That does make it a little bit easier in these tight quarters. So I have been out and about talking with community members, and there are some questions that I have gotten during those conversations. So I'm going to answer them, so the folks that are online or that watch this afterwards, because I always consider or figure one person has a question, then more do. One of the first questions that I get is, what happened to the Osprey camera? And the Osprey camera broke. And unfortunately, we didn't notice that it was broken until we went to turn it on to watch for the Osprey. And it was at a time where we're not allowed to go up in their area and fix it. So for this year, We don't have the Osprey camera, but it is scheduled to be repaired before the viewing time next year. So the camera will be up and everybody will be able to see what's going on with the Osprey if they show up, which let's hope that they do next year. I was surprised at how many questions on that I got. So people like that camera. We got questions about DEQ and what's going on with DEQ. And I just received from staff that they had a telephone call with DEQ. And as you know, we've been focusing on improving and maintaining our infrastructure to make certain that our community is served far into the future. Last year, we removed biosolids from Lagoon 2. And during a conversation with DEQ, our staff received praise because they've seen a significant change for the better these last 2 years. And from DEQ, that's pretty impressive because they're not really known for giving praise. And so for staff to receive it is pretty great. And so I want to call them out for doing the right thing and getting things done and making this a better place for our community. We'll also be, as you know, we're looking at funding to do biosolids removal in Lagoon 1. And we've identified and we received informal notification that there is some funding out there that we could potentially use for biosolids from this lagoon. And as you know, grants are way high on our list, and we've been very, very fortunate to receive a lot of grants because it helps us leverage our money. And I'm going to call out my staff again. Sean and Marshall have done a great job getting grants into the city. And that helps us to spread the money that we have further. Now, last time I talked about our budget and how the budget works. And I received a lot of really positive feedback from the community. Council, you've heard this 100 times, so if you want to ignore me, you go right ahead. But there may be some new folks, and I know we've got some new folks in the audience. And I'll just try and do a really quick summary about the budget and how it generally works. We have a number of funds, and I like to call those funds buckets. And the general fund is one of those buckets. And that bucket receives money from property tax, and then some franchise fees, but mainly from property tax. And the money in the general fund pays for the library, the museum, parks, and police. We get about 2.7 million, and I'm using rough numbers, but about 2.7 million in property tax, and it costs us about 3.2 million for our police department alone. General funds are what are called unrestricted funds, so we can transfer them, but the problem is there really aren't enough to transfer. So we don't do a lot of transferring from the general fund if we can help it. And as you probably all know, we're talking about a public safety fee, and that is to help sustain our police department and the general fund. And if you want more information on that, Rob, was it last week we spent with Bill?
Yes.
Thursday. So last week we spent a good hour with Bill Kohler of the Statesman Journal. He's done a lot of research on this. He wrote a great article. If you want more information, take a look at that. It's really very accurate, and he's got a lot of background in governmental reporting. So pull that one out, and then if you have more questions, give us a call. We're always happy to talk about it. Well, we wish we didn't have to talk about it, but we're happy to educate about it. The next fund I want to talk about is tourism and events. Now, tourism and events is funded by the transient lodging tax that's collected mainly from the hotel. There are some VRBOs, but mainly the hotel. And these monies fund our downtown events, like Indie Days, Summer Series. And it's kind of what you would call a semi-restricted fund, so it needs to be used for tourism and events. Then we have the water fund. Now, the water bucket, that water fund, is funded by water rates paid by our water users. And these funds are, again, semi-restricted funds. They should only be used for water, so operations and maintenance. And it's these funds that are used to make certain that the community continues to have enough safe drinking water for the next 20 to 30 years. So, water for water, and then sewer, much like water, sewer for sewer. So it's funded, that bucket is filled by your sewer rates. And again, we use them for sewer, so operations and maintenance. And it's these funds that are used to make certain that when you flush your toilet, the sewage goes where it's supposed to go. Because the other places it goes, you don't want it there. So sewer for sewer, water for water. And then streets is another bucket. And that's funded by a portion of the funded by a portion of the gas taxes that are collected by the state. And so these funds are restricted and they can only be used for street projects. And then we have grants. And I already talked about grants and how they're a really high priority, and it helps us to leverage in every area. So we received some very good infrastructure grants, and that's going to help us to do these large infrastructure projects. We've received some good parks grants, and that's going to help us in the general fund to extend those funds to do some parks. But grants are restricted, and when you apply for a grant, there's parameters, and so you can only use the grant for those things within the parameters and how you describe you're going to use them. So if we get, hello, whoever came in, so if we get a parks grant, I can't use it for the museum. It has to be used for the park, and it has to be used for the things in the park that we say we were going to use it for. So that's kind of a really high-level summary of the budget, and since my finance director is nodding his head, I didn't mess it up too badly. But I want to close now with just a couple of pieces of information. Wristbands for Indie Days went on sale last week. They're $10 per band, per person, per day, but if you're an Independence resident, come to City Hall, bring something that says you're an Independence resident, and you will get a discount. And I believe it's $6 per band for Independence residents. And it's 6 and under that are still free, Sean. 6 and under are still free at Indie Days. And it is July 3rd that is the free day. So July 3rd is the free day. Now on the not so good news. I always hate to end on the not so good news, but Riverview Park restrooms have been hit by a serial vandal. And as a result, we're going to have to close the restrooms through next week for repairs. Now, added to this problem, the trail cameras that were put up at the boat dock restrooms were not only vandalized, but were stolen. So if you have any information, anyone out there listening to this, any people in our audience, please let us know. We're trying to extend our funds as much as we can, and having to use the funds to repair damages from vandals is just, it's hard. So, and then I also want to say thank you to everyone for your patience and understanding as we work to get the repairs and maintenance done on those restrooms. I know it's not convenient, but we want to get them in good order for your use. And that, Mayor, is all I have.
Questions for city manager at this point? Okay, I think, Mr. Irvine and Ms. West, I think you have the, excuse me, I jumped ahead. It's Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor, members of City Council. I see we've all had a chance to read the memo that Kenneth put forth, and I'm just ready to answer any questions that you may have about that memo.
Do we have any questions? Council received a memo about the water treatment plant. It was just an information memo. There's no decisions to be made. It's just making sure that the information is correct, because who knows, it's on the internet, you never know.
Unless, if I may, Mayor, unless it happens to be the City of Independence, Facebook or website, it is accurate.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that. Okay, now, Mr. Irvine and Ms. West, the next item.
And I will let Sean handle it.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So yeah, my memo's in the packet. I'll summarize it briefly here. Be happy to answer any questions. As I think you all know, the All Current Food Bank has been experiencing an increase in the number of folks utilizing their services. They're currently in leased space that's kind of, it's a little small for what they really need to have now, and it's not as efficiently laid out as it could be. So they've been working to raise money to be able to construct a new facility in town after looking for an existing building and not being able to find one that really suited their purpose. They've been able to raise a lot of money for it, and one of the big chunks that they received recently came in the form of federal funds. These are funds that came directly to the food bank. They were not passed through the city or anything like that. But as I know at least some of you are aware, and we've talked about in the past, federal funds tend to come with a lot of strings attached in terms of wages you have to pay, the ways you have to do bidding, the ways you have to track different things. And the Yellow Current Food Bank is operating on a purely volunteer basis. Everybody from the board to the volunteers to the person who runs it, they're all volunteer. They do a great job getting food out the door, but they don't have experience managing federal projects. And so that's frankly kind of a challenge for them. In conversations, so the city, we are part of the Mid-Valley Council of Governments. This is an organization that serves all of the local governments in the Marion, Polk, and Yamhill region. They provide a lot of different services to, particularly the smaller local governments that don't necessarily have the size to need full-time staff to do those jobs themselves. We actually use the Council of Governments to essentially administer and report on federal grants that we get, because it is complicated enough. We'd much rather build in some money into the grant to contract the COG to be able to do that work on our behalf instead of us having to deal with it. And so from conversations, we wanted to see if the COG could provide those same services to the food bank, since it is a community-wide benefit. Council of Governments said they were willing and able to do that. They can contract directly with the food bank to provide those services. But since they primarily work with local governments, they requested that the City of Independence pass a resolution directing the Council of Governments to work with the food bank on this federal grant. So the resolution before you is essentially just requesting that the Council of Governments work with the food bank to provide grant administration services for their federal funds that they have received. They would have to negotiate out whatever type of contract or fee for service that was going to provide. There's no fiscal impact to the city, and it will not take any staff time on the city's part as well. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yes, so this would be the food bank working directly with the COG,
Correct,
and no money coming out of the city budget in any way, shape, or form.
correct.
Thank you.
This is an action item.
I move to approve Resolution 24-1607, a resolution directed to Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments to work with the Yellow Current Food Bank on grant administration requirements of a federal allocation.
Second?
A motion second. Is there discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go into the budget adoption. So let me just tell you how this is going to roll so everybody understands. Staff, Mr. Mooney and Ms. West will handle the staff report. There will also be a budget hearing for anybody who wants to say something about it. There'll also be a state revenue sharing hearing. We have to officially have a hearing that says, yes, we want the state revenue that they want to give us. And that's a difficult one. And then we'll do that. And then we're also we're folding in both items 7.3 and 7.4 with the proposed amendments that have come as a result of some of the efforts by the budget committee, and staff will talk about that. We're going to do this in an omnibus motion. And so that's what's going to happen. Everybody clear? Mr. Mooney and Ms. West, it's to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, tonight you have before you the budget that was approved by the budget committee, along with a couple of amendments that have been prepared by staff in direct response to some of the comments and the actions that were taken by the budget committee. Real briefly, I'd like to kind of summarize those amendments for you. The first reduces the public safety fee revenue in the general fund. And that was in response to concerns by the budget committee that we look for ways to reduce the impacts of that public safety fee on the citizens of Independence. So what we've done is proposed an amendment that would reduce general fund revenues by about $134,000, I don't know the number exactly. So it takes that public safety fee from $27 to about $20 a month. And then in subsequent years, it would reduce to $17 and then to $10 where it becomes indexed along with the CPI. So the impact in 24-25 would be $20 per month. Beginning, thank you, beginning in January. So with the reason is to try and minimize the impacts, again, of the fee showing up on the bill to the time when those bills are lowest for our citizens, is during the winter, obviously, instead of during high water bill times. The Second Amendment increases revenues in the Tourism and Events Fund through implementation of an admission charge to the summer concert series, summer series concerts. I keep saying that backwards. $5,000 to cover contract services for setup, takedown, as well as helping collect those monies on site. And then the kind of the byproduct of that also is to fully eliminate that transfer from the general fund to the tourism and events fund, which was consistent with what we heard from the budget committee and council. So those are the two amendments to the approved budget that we put forward to staff, again, in direct response to what we thought y'all wanted. I entertain any questions on those amendments specifically before we go any further.
Questions for the presenter? Okay, keep going.
Thanks. So at this point, the budget as approved by the budget committee and with the proposed amendments really does three things. It maintains current service levels at the library, the museum, and parks through the 24-25 fiscal year. I want to be really clear about that. We're not proposing closing the museum, the library, or parks in the 24-25 fiscal year. It provides stability in the Tourism and Events Fund and the related programming there. And it stabilizes funding for the police department within the general fund. So at this point, I can turn it back for consideration of the approved budget and for adoption.
So what I'm going to do now, as I previously said, I'm going to open it for a public hearing on the budget, and I have Mike Rhodes. Good evening.
Howdy.
You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
So I'm Mike Rhodes. I live here in the Air Park. I'm a retired medical professional and a licensed engineer in nuclear and mechanical engineering. And I'm a business owner and operator for 25 years. This budget business is complicated, as you pointed out, and I ask your indulgence that it will take me 6.5 minutes to read through this. So if I read fast.
Thank you.
Okay, the city's financial management is so messed up, I don't even know where to begin. First of all, government core responsibilities, fire, police, education, and infrastructure should be funded from tax base, not through unrepresented fees. Funding anything beyond that scope is optional, and not until you've fully met your core responsibilities. Your budget summary has a statement, a one-time infusion of federal COVID funds created significant fluctuations that made it harder to see the base budget for the fiscal year 23 to ensure it was sustainable. That what you actually did was use these COVID funds to subsidize the general fund for expenses you knew were not sustainable without it. So now you come for more money to cover the bloated spending you did last year under the Federal American Rescue Plan Act. Money to governments is like drugs to addicts. You never have enough. And like student loans, just because you can doesn't mean you should. It appears to me this city government has a filet mignon budget appetite on a hamburger means. You seem to forget you don't borrow your way to prosperity. Now you come to the residents to rescue you. You're planning additional police funding of over $1 million by tacking on this public safety fee to our city water utility bill. Police is funded by taxes, not by fees on a utility bill. The only reason you do it this way is to deny us, the citizens, the ability to vote on it. We get to vote on taxes, bonds, levies, but not fees. Fees are a very popular government shenanigan to deny public involvement. You're planning an arts and culture levy in November. Sounds very lofty and sophisticated. Who doesn't want to aspire to that? The trouble is, this is actually a run-of-the-mill parks and recreation levy for the city museum, parks, and library that will cost the vast majority of us way north of $1,200 a year. That alone would be a 15% increase on my property taxes. It's outrageous. This levy is government smoke and mirrors. Its title is pure deception, and its price tag is as lofty as its title. Libraries and museums ought to be funded at the county level, not on the back of small towns. Speaking of lofty, taxes in this county are already through the roof. In my same value home, where I came from, the property tax bill here is 62% higher than over in Crook County, even though Polk County has 3.5 times larger tax base and smaller budgets. 2 weeks ago, you voted to raise our water bills 31% over the next 5 years, plus an exponential usage multiplier. To make collection matters worse, at the last minute, you approved to divert the greater than base rate fees to subsidize the water bills of people in need, which was left vague and to the bafflement of the city manager on how to implement it. We were told this rate increase and restructuring was to show additional income just to qualify to borrow an additional $40 million you claim you need for the water sewer project. But on May 17th, Trademark News reported that the exponential tiered rate change isn't to raise revenue, but to discourage use. It's an interesting business plan given that the city water department generates revenue by selling water, not by discouraging the use of the product that funds it. Yet you insist on drilling more wells to prove up more water that you're discouraging people to use. Oh wait, you don't even own the land yet for these wells. In fact, you're trying to confiscate private property through eminent domain. I feel for the sacrificial lamb property owner you're going after. The $40 million question is, how do you claim to have water rights that need to be proven up on land you don't even own? What you need to do is go back to the state to extend your water rights claim period and save the city from sinking millions into the ground before it's actually needed. The $40 million price tag you've been handed for this project, it's a joke. It's a pie in the sky. The city staff's own admission, there's been no project engineering done yet. If I recall, there aren't even test wells yet. Well, that's right, you don't own the land. I assure you, whatever you think it will cost and the time it will take to build this, take it times pi divided by 2 after the engineering has been done. You've already heard the staff sheepishly admit mission creep by envisioning police, maintenance shops, and yes, even a heliport provisions on the site. You already have these facilities within the city limits, including a full-service airport. Don't let the city staff run amok. Know when to say no. Then there are the assumptions used to justify this urgent need. At the last meeting, I suggested limiting permits that leads to growth as a means of curbing infrastructure expansion, cost, and schedule. City staff howled how that can't be done by state law. First of all, you owe us all an explanation of what ORS, as you claim, obligates the city to grow beyond its financial means.
If you can wrap, that would be good.
I'm getting close. City website touts Independence as the 4th largest growing town in Oregon. We'll stop that. City plan department tells me a single family home permitting costs $50,000. I've also heard developers are starting to lose interest in building here because of out of control city costs. Borrowing tens of millions without a sustainable mechanism in place to pay as you go is a path to bankruptcy. So what is really going on here? It's apparent to me you don't have an income problem, you have a spending and debt problem. Polk County and Independence already has extraordinary high taxes and fees, yet you're bleeding red on balance sheets. What I see here are financial management red flags everywhere. What we're learning is just the tip of the iceberg of the city's financial thoughts. The road to ruin is paved with good intentions. Don't assume your decision process here leads to somewhere else.
If we can, thank you. If you can hand that to Karen, so she has it. Okay, I don't have any other folks under under the budget hearing. Okay, I'm now going to officially open if anybody wants to comment on state revenue sharing. As I said, we have to officially provide the opportunity because we have to approve revenue sharing. I don't see anybody jumping up and want to talk about revenue sharing because we all want it to happen. So without objection, I'm going to move forward. And which color am I looking for?
We're looking at pink.
Okay. So we're going to put a motion to approve
I
on the floor.
move to approve resolution number 24-1608, a resolution adopting the City of Independence budget for fiscal year 2024 to 2025 with the following amendments. An immediate 15% cut across the entire budget. A following amendment would be the museum cover 25% of its own.
Slow down, slow down, staff has to get this. Go back, please.
An immediate 15%.
Immediate 15% cut in the overall budget. The museum to cover 25% of its own costs through fundraising, scholarships, memberships, user fees, and that to increase annually by 25% over the next 4 years until it transitions to a 501c3 private organization not funded by the City of Independence. All money that we cut from this budget will go so that we are not putting any fees on the Independence water bill for people to pay.
Is that your motion?
That is my motion.
Second.
There is a second. There is now discussion.
I will start the discussion. I am trying to change this and give it to city staff so that they can decide where they're going to make those cuts. So if they choose to make it an overall sweeping cut of 15% on every department, they can do that. But we need a 15% cut in the overall budget because people in Independence need to know that we're serious about cutting back our spending because that's what people are doing at home. And we need to be able to do this so that we can eliminate that public safety fee. I don't think funds should be cut from the police department, but again, that can go to city staff, but it has to be cut. Last year's budget was close to $38 million. This year's budget is close to $54 million. We have to trim our spending. We have to. And if we don't do this, then we're not telling the people of Independence that we're serious about trying to save money for them at home. People just can't afford this. We have to cut our spending.
Thank you. I have a clarifying question from staff here.
Councilor Roque, you said a 15% overall reduction in the budget.
Yes.
Is that for the general fund or is that across the entire budget?
Across the entire budget. 15% across the general fund wouldn't do any good. It has to be the entire thing. But it can be done at your discretion. So it would be 15% of the $54 million that we're spending this year, which is still significantly more than what we spent last year. But it has to be done so that we do not put that fee on our water bill for people.
Additional comments by council members?
I have a question. On the tourism and events, how many employees is on that? Because it was 366,000 for wages and taxes. So I was trying to figure out how many people are covered under the tourism and events.
If I remember right, Councilor, it's 2 full-time employees plus allocations of several employees.
One, I think it's one plus allocation of several employees.
Okay, sorry. One plus
employee for the
allocation.
366,000?
There's a portion of the police department that is
That goes into
allocated there, as well as several other
Okay,
city
sorry,
staff.
that's very
So
confusing.
finance goes in there, public works
I
goes
have
in
more
there.
questions.
Okay.
Yeah, basically, I did get a clear answer on that one, but, so, a lot of the things I saw in the budget, I'm one that did not vote for the budget during the budget committee part of it. Do we have to build a $40 million water treatment plant? Can we do something else and live within our means, because we do not have the money for this? I know that you guys want Western Interlock and a data processing center to be here, like that's a dream, so that, but that is a lot of water, and I think that might be why they're really pushing for this. I am concerned that I didn't know about a helicopter pad or a new public works department being on city council. I heard about it in the last city council meeting. I saw that there was 18 more in the budget this year, as opposed to last year, but yet we have less money to spend. I don't feel we should let another project like the city hall, the police station be built without approval of the voters. If we continue with the $40 million loan for just the water treatment, because the whole plan is 95 million, but 40 million is just the water treatment plant. Who pays for that and when? I'm assuming we may get to vote on it, or do we not get to vote on it and just put it on people's taxes? And it's just a forced, because somebody has to pay this $40 million back. I think there's 10,255 people here, which is another $3,900 of debt for every person just for the water treatment facility. How much debt is too much in a town our size? Are we approaching that? Because I thought we were really close to that. Originally, we were going to run out of water in 2026. Now I think it's 2030, so that's great. I'm concerned that we're threatening to cut services such as parks, museum, and library. But we just spent nearly $500,000 on a new park. The general fund budget is $1,363,009 more than what we spent last year, so I was confused on where we cut. If the budget's bigger by $1,363,009 this year than last year in the general fund, I don't understand where we were cutting. If somebody could explain that to me.
Just to clarify, we didn't spend $500,000 on a park, that was all grants funded.
That was not all grants funded.
It was all grant funded.
It was
SDCs. Sunset Meadows, it's all grant funded.
Grant and SDCs. Yes.
So, since there-
460,000.
So I'm gonna ask that, I'm not, did you get all the?
I think I had all the
Okay,
questions.
because I think there were a number of questions in there, and I'm gonna let staff,
I was just afraid I wasn't gonna get to say what I wanted to say like in the budget hearing.
All right, well, we'll do our best. I don't know that we got them all, so, okay. Gerald, Sunset Meadows Park?
SDCs and grants from state and private companies. There's no impact to the rest of the budget.
So I'll restate that since Gerald's speaking quietly because it's been quite the long day. Sunset Meadows Park was funded by grants, thank you Sean and Marshall, and by SDCs. SDCs are paid by developers. They are paid by developers for the building of increased capacity. So that's what we use for water treatment plants, wastewater treatment plants, and parks. Those are not general funds.
we're gonna let staff make comment, then we're gonna have other people make comment.
Well, that's not the answer to my question, because we're saying we're cutting parks, we're gonna cut parks, we have no
Well, wait a
money,
minute,
but yet we just are building another one that has to be
We're-
maintained.
So,
Let's let staff continue to answer the questions.
so those are SDCs, and it doesn't have any effect on the general fund. As Rob indicated, we're, for this year, parks, museum, and library are not going to be cut. That is for the 26, 27 discussion, depending on how things, 25, 26 discussion. Okay, so I got Sunset Meadows. So there, I'm gonna try to do this and explain. When a city budgets, we have to budget, and remember those buckets that I talked about? We have to budget each of those buckets based upon the revenue that's coming in. That revenue for those buckets includes grants across the board. So the general fund grant will increase the general fund balance. So if we received a $400,000 grant for Sunset Meadows, which we did, it's gonna go in, was it not 400?
Not 400.
What was it?
It went,
75,000.
we got 75 from the state, we got 50 from T-Mobile and just an 18 from.
Okay. So that amount will increase the general fund, but
It's in the parks
Parks.
cap.
right, so it'll increase our budget. So our overall budget is 57 something, and it will increase that overall amount, because in order to spend it, we have to put it in revenue. But remember, I talked about restricted funds. These are restricted. You can't use them for the museum or the library or another park, they're restricted. But it does increase the bottom line, because we have to bring it in as revenue to be able to spend it. So that, and then we've, as I said in the beginning, we've received quite a few grants because we've been working really hard so that we can leverage and expand the funds that our community puts into the coffers. That increases it. But again, restricted funds, right? We can only use them for certain things. So I can't use them, we can't use them for police if it's not a police grant. I
But you
can't
didn't have to use it for sunset.
Let's let the staff people complete their,
So the, when a grant comes in, and I'll use Sunset as an example, we applied for a grant. Sean, you want to explain that? We applied for a grant.
Well, yeah, so for a grant, OPRD's, the Oregon Parks and Rec has a grant program to fund park development. We knew we had a park that we were looking to develop, neighbors wanted to develop. So we put in for a grant to develop it. We had funds to match that with the system development charges. Those are fees paid by developers for expansions. So, so we get the grant, and then as Gus said, essentially it comes into the city, essentially, we have to, in order to expend it, we have to bring it in as revenue. So then it then goes out, but we can't sort of turn around and say, well, we're gonna spend it on this other park, or we're gonna spend it on even, we said we were gonna build play equipment and pedestrian lighting and seating area. We wouldn't be able to say, oh, well, we're actually gonna build a climbing wall or something different like that. We have to stick with what we indicated in the grant.
So that's one question. Did you get others?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Gerald.
Can I just go through my list of funds and explain where the money's at and what's going to go forward, what's not going to go forward? Because when they're talking about the millions of increases, it's in Public Works and it's in the SDC funds.
Mayor, would you like that explanation for
I
council?
think so, I think that helps clarify.
So I'm gonna start with the transportation fund. There's an additional $2.5 million in there that was put in there for Allied Development, who is going to cash fund the signal at 7th Street and Monmouth. When we put it in, it was anticipated to go forward. Allied since pulled out, and we were actively working to try to get grant funds from the state. So I left it in there in case we got grant funds. Those have not materialized. So the total fund for the transportation portion of it, you can assume right now that 2.5 million of the total 3,986,000 is not there. So 2.5 million is going to drop. That's just going to happen. Transportation SDCs. We had anticipated a total of $511,100 in SDCs coming in. That was set aside for Brandy Meadows 5 and 6. That developer has since pulled out. So in transportation SDCs, if I don't have the funds coming in, they're not going to be there. So if you take that total, that means the total fund is going to drop from about 1.4 million down to 900,000. Okay, so now we're at 3 million. Somebody keep track of this.
I'm writing it down.
Okay. Parks Cap Reserve, we got one-time money infusion for OPRD at 75,000, 50,000 from a private grant. We since got another 18,000, which isn't even in this budget, which we're gonna have to change later. So that's one-time money, so we're looking at 125 plus, so 145,000 that's coming into the Parks Cap Reserve Fund that's going to be immediately expended on Sunset Park. So at the 100 and, let's just round it, 150. Parks SDCs, there was an assumed, because of Brandy Meadows, that we were gonna get another 292,000. They're not coming in, so you can add 292,000 to that number. Capital projects. So this is for the delivery of road projects. We're anticipating, well, we've been awarded a $1,004,902 grant for the 5th Street Safe Routes to School. That's the crossing of Monmouth. So there's $1 million. And then we got a $500,000 earmark from at the federal level for Chestnut. So there's 1.5 million. I also have in there a potential of additional earmarks of another 1.5 million if we can get it to move the bridge forward. So there's 3 more million. We for sure have the 1.5. I don't have the other 1.5. Going on to sewer fund. I have a $6 million revenue in there for loans for the wastewater treatment plant upgrade. Of the wastewater treatment plant upgrade, we're using about 95,000 in SDCs that we already have cash on hand, 1,175,000 in rates, which we'll have, or actually I do have, and then the rest of it will be loaned. So we will use cash first and then borrow what we need in this fiscal year to do the work on the treatment plant. We also have a $2 million grant from the state for the 9th Street Pump Station Phase 2 and 3. That grant came in this fiscal year. It carried through to the beginning fund balance and will be in this next fiscal year, which we will expend that amount. So there's 8 million, 2 million and 6 million. Sewer SDCs, 430,000 was anticipated to come in for Brandy Meadows. That's not going to come in, so you can add another 430,000 to that. Water fund, we had an $880,000 earmark from the federal level for Corvallis Road water line, and I had also anticipated additional money for the loan for the water treatment plant, so roughly about 1.2 million. The treatment plant is being funded by SDCs on hand, about 37,000, 1.1 million in rates existing, and then about $1 million loan. Let's see if there's another one in there. And then Corvallis Road was 377,000 in SDCs because it's 100% SDC eligible. Rates, 280,700 and the $880,000 earmark from feds. So total of that is 880 plus 1 million, so almost 1.9 million. Water SDCs, we were anticipating getting a total of 174,000 for Brandy Meadows. That's not going to be there, so you can add that onto the increase. Storm drain, we had 200,000 in there because we wanted to try to work with the Ash Creek Water District to do a project. They have funds available. We have not contacted them. We haven't worked that out. Surprisingly, I've been too busy. So you can add the 200,000 for that. And then in stormwater SDCs.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
He has so far approximately 15 changes to our budget that
No.
he.
No.
No, those aren't changes.
Those aren't changes.
They're just fake money that's not really
Nothing
coming
new.
in.
That's just money that we have to bring. Remember we talked about, if I may, Mayor?
Please.
Remember we talked about in order, if there is the possibility that we will get it, we need to bring it in as revenue so that we can spend it, right? Those are possible revenue sources. So we know our wastewater treatment plant needs to be upgraded. We are expecting to have some revenue come in from other sources. We know Chestnut Bridge is going to have to be done. We are expecting to have funding come in for that, but it may not. But the only way we can spend it is if we put it in there. So we're not going to change the budget. The budget sits as it is because we could get a $1 million earmark. We just don't know now. Remember, our budget is a snapshot in time, and we have to plan, right? We have to plan for what could be. So we could potentially get more money, so we have to plan for that. So when we know Sean's applied for a grant, or the mayor and I have worked really hard to get an earmark, we put that in there so that we can spend it if we get it. So it'll stay like that. And then next year, when we do a snapshot, they may not be in there, but there may be other ones, right? So does that help?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay.
Like, it's
Okay.
just-
I have one
Go,
fund left.
please continue.
Okay. Stormwater SDCs, we were anticipating Brandy Meadows, they're not coming in, that's an additional $52,000 that we had to budget for and won't come in. So all of these numbers are numbers we budgeted for, some have come in, loans, earmarks, grants. Other ones we know won't in. Brandy Meadows 5 and 6, if I take it out of the budget and somebody comes in, then I gotta come in and ask you to change the budget, add that money back in. So we put in there what our projections will come in, and if the money doesn't come in, you don't have the expenditures. Because remember I told you, unless I have SDCs in cash, I am not spending the money.
So are there additional staff answers here that we're gonna go to? And then we're gonna allow other people who wanna speak, please.
Rob, do you have?
A couple, that there was a question about how much debt is too much
Yes.
debt. I don't know how to answer that, other than the city is currently able to service its debt. We're making principal and interest payments as scheduled.
And if I may, debt depends too on the fund, right? So debt in the water fund is no different than debt in the general fund, because go ahead.
Yeah, there's a maximum limit on, there's a state limit on general obligation debt. It's set at 3% of 3% of assessed value. We're way below that in terms of our general obligation debt. We only have one general obligation debt.
Is that the MyNet debt, or
The MyNet debt does not apply to that limit.
this was one we took years ago, but
Right.
that, okay. So, okay.
Sorry.
Keep going, no, keep going.
Did we get a total count? Sorry. Total
No, I
dollar
don't
count?
know that we ended up with a total.
It's about 15.5 million.
Yeah,
Ish.
when we did this same exercise earlier today, we came up with about $16 million of capital outlay that was budgeted and funded from grants, SDCs, those types of things. So we're right in there.
Okay, so I think we've gotten a flavor of what this is.
And I apologize, Counselor Job, I was trying to write as fast as I can on your questions.
That's okay,
Council,
it doesn't matter.
did you have anything else to add? Okay, I know that there's some other people who'd probably like to speak. Are there any counselors who want to speak at this point?
Yes.
Please do.
What I'm seeing and hearing, listening to everything that's been said so far and paying attention to the idea of buckets and how only things in certain funds can be spent for certain things. We can't take and shuffle money from savings into checking like I would do with my private accounts, because that money is already dedicated to something else, which allows us to do things like have SDCs in the bank in order to make expenditures on certain things. But what I'm hearing, bottom line, is about 15.5 million is in the budget based on hoped for project work if money from the outside is received. So that, and the 15% of the budget reduction that was suggested is about 7.75 million. So that almost doubles that 15% reduction if you look at it in terms of what these monies are being spent on and where the sources of income would come from. And again, bottom line, we have a general fund that pays for police, parks, museum, library. It has a static amount in it that's based on how many taxes we get from the state of Oregon. And if you look at the very first thing, which we're talking about, a public service fee, 3-point-something million to fund the police department and 1.2 million that comes in, I forget the.
2.7.
Okay,
Approximately.
that comes in from taxes. There's already a deficit on just one particular section of the city. We don't want to reduce our public safety. We don't want to make ourselves a more crime-ridden city. And I would like to find a solution on this at a much higher level than the city. It needs to be fixed in the legislature, but unfortunately, we can't do that. So I'm seeing it coming down to the fact that 30% of the budget almost are projects that won't be done if the money's not there to do them. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, according to staff, I'm seeing head nods.
Additional, other counselors before I go first, people to speak a second time. Anybody else? Councilor Schwartzler.
Excuse me. I appreciate the work that the budget committee did. We asked both the city council and the citizens to come up with a budget, and it's not an easy process. It's difficult, hard decisions need to be made, but I want to respect the work that they put into that. And I also appreciate that the city took that feedback that we had and reduced that fee from $27 to $20. So I feel like the budget committee's desires and wishes are being heard. And I thank people for working hard to do that.
Thank you. Additional comment? Hold on 1 minute. Everybody else first time? Okay, you'd like?
First, Robert's Rule of Orders nowhere says that everybody has to speak before somebody speaks again, so that's one. Two, even if we took out this 15 million that people are talking about, our budget from last year was still approximately $38 million, which is a huge amount of money to spend. We need to cut this, and however the city seems fit, by 15% so that people pay zero in fees on their water bills. That's the whole end goal on this, is we have to be able to live within our means and pay this. So you can throw all these words out here like $16 million really doesn't count because we're not really spending it yet. It does count. When people at home can't afford to put food on their table, we have to tighten our belts so that they don't have to do it more. We have to look out for people. So we can talk all we want, but this is just the fact of the matter here. 15% cut. We need to make cuts because people at home are making cuts. We need to show that we're going to stop spending beyond our means here.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Jobe, you wish to speak?
I have a question for Gerald. The budget, does that go to whoever we're getting the loans from, the $40 million loan? Does our city budget, like, hey, this is how much money we're gonna make?
Yes, so several things go to an agency or wherever we get the loan from. They look at our previous budgets, they look at our existing debt, they look at, did you pass a water rate increase, which you did, to cover the cost of the loan debt, which is that 5.5% increase each year. That increase includes not only inflation, but the cost to maintain that debt, the principal and interest at the end of the project when the loan comes due. Plus, it also pays for interest that's accrued while you're taking out that loan, while you're doing design and building the project. That amount that you borrow accrues interest. So the intent is to pay that interest off as you go. So when you get to the end of the project and it's closed out, you only owe the principal of what you borrow.
Okay, but when they look at those numbers, they're gonna see that extra 15 million that we don't really have.
No,
So you're gonna take that out?
all they're looking at is, do you have a rate resolution for that? And then we also pair it with the rate study that was done, that was brought to council and approved. That tells the story for the loan group, of how we're gonna pay for this. That's all they really care about. They don't care about the rest of the budget.
They don't care about revenue and stuff like that.
They don't care about, if I'm getting a loan on water, they don't care about sewer, they don't care about streets, they don't care about storm, they don't care about libraries and parks. All they care about is the water fund and can it support that properly.
Thank you. Are there other councilors who wish to speak? I'm going to speak. I think this is a bad amendment. I agree with some of the comments that Councilor Schwartzler made, that I want to respect the work that both staff and the Budget Committee have done to do this. I also believe that this is not a time to be cutting police. You know, we're going, you know, public safety, you know, there are a zillion cities in our state. They're adding public safety fees so that they can continue their police departments at the level that their community wants. Taking a 15% across the board it's not good. And I'm not in favor of that. Does anybody else wish to speak? If not, we're going to vote on the motion. Would somebody please recite the motion, please?
Councilor Roden moved to approve resolution number 24-1608, a resolution adopting the City of Independence budget for fiscal year 24-25 with an immediate 15% cut across all departments, that the museum covers 25% of its own costs through fundraising, sponsorships, memberships, and user fees to increase annually by 25% for the next 4 years until it transitions to a 501c3.
Point of clarification.
Sure.
It should read across for the entire budget, not all departments. Because I want city staff to be able to determine how the 15% is.
Oh, okay, across the budget?
Yes.
Is that how you understood?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. You got it, Karen?
Yeah.
Okay.
An immediate 15% cut across the budget.
All right, everybody understands what the motion is. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Roden and Joe vote yes. All opposed?
Aye, nay,
So
opposed.
that's Schwartzler, Martin Willis, Core. Motion is defeated. I'd be happy to take another motion. Kathy, I think you're reading one there, please.
Yes, sir. I move to approve resolution number 24-1608, a resolution adopting the City of Independence budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 as amended, to approve appropriations as amended, to oppose the ad valorem property taxes for 24-25 at the full permanent rate of 4.5897 per 1,000 of assessed value, and in the amount of $389,861 for debt service of the general obligation bonds, and to categorize the taxes.
I have a motion.
Second.
And a second by Core. Is there further discussion on this?
Yes.
Please do, Councilor Roden.
Once again, I'm disappointed. We're not doing anything to try to alleviate the burdens off the backs of people who live here in Independence. We're not doing anything to people who come forth and say we need to try to figure out how to fund our library, how to make the museum self-sustaining, how to fund our police department. Instead, we just push through this budget once again that is overinflated, is like a golden egg, and all we do is sit here and say that we're happy with what's been presented in front of us. Our job as city councilors is to make changes that represent all of Independence for the better. And we have failed to do that because we just keep rubber stamping what's put in front of us.
Additional comments by anybody else?
Yes.
Please do.
I think that we have some department heads who see the writing on the wall. I suspect that you will see the Friends of the Heritage Museum as well as the Friends of the Library redouble their efforts. They understand full well that they basically have a year to right their ship. And so I am in favor of giving them that year to find ways to generate revenue. I don't want to lose our museum. I don't want to lose our library. Those computers, that internet are, for some of our families, the only access to computers and internet that they have. And it's an integral part of their education here in our school district, which we're saying is, important to us to assist in funding, then let's educate children, let's give them the experience of the museum so that they know their history and that we can move forward from that history.
Councilor Court, excuse me, Councilor Court.
Thank you. I want to second what Councilor Martin really said, but also want to say we have an amazingly professional staff that works very hard to make things happen in the city, and I'm absolutely convinced that the squirrels are cranking in their heads to try to figure out how to solve these problems. And I trust them to do the right thing, and I think they deserve our respect and our admiration.
Councilor Schwartzler.
Also, this is not just an Independence problem. I mean, I've been talking with my connections throughout the Willamette Valley in city governments. Every city is facing similar issues, and that's not comforting, I don't think, to any of us. It's still difficult choices that we have to make, but there's a bigger problem that's at play here, and I think someone, maybe you touched on it, there's a bigger problem that we need to be fixing at the state level, and I think that people are working hard to do that and try to get out ahead of it. So I do appreciate the hard work that the staff is doing, and I think for many cities, next year is going to be significantly harder than this year, and I appreciate that the city actually brought some of these things to our attention so that we can start putting some things into motion this year to help with next year, whereas I think other cities are choosing not to go that route.
Councilor Roden.
We could have done the work right here tonight to try to right the ship for the library and the museum. We could have done the right work tonight. We could have set the museum course on a path of self-sufficiency over the next 4 years as I proposed. And this isn't being brought to our attention as if we had no idea that this was going to come smack us in the face. When I started this as a city councilor 4 years ago, I came to this group of people and said, we're going to hit the wall soon. And if we don't change paths, we're going to hit it hard. And you guys told me I was uneducated and I did not know this budget process. So now here we are, exactly where I said we would be 4 years ago. And you guys are like, wow, I didn't expect this to happen. Here it is. And I projected it 4 years ago.
We had this discussion last year,
Yes.
specifically regarding, so I take
It's on you, 4 years ago.
I'm just gonna say, I take offense to the statement that whatever your psychic predictions were fell on deaf ears. We had an at-length discussion last year when we made difficult decisions that there would be more difficult decisions to make this year.
Councilor Court.
I just have a question.
Okay,
I have
thank you.
something to say.
Councilor Morton.
I mentioned it earlier, and I agree with Councilor Schwartzler that we do need to solve this problem at a much higher level than each individual city. I would encourage everyone to take your concerns and take your thoughts to our state legislature, because that's where some of the solutions need to be managed and brought into reality.
Okay, I'm reading my Robert's Rules of Order as pointed out by staff. Everyone may speak twice in the same motion on the same day, and when someone who's not yet spoken on it even once has preference over someone who's already spoken on it. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so, okay. We're going to,
I have one more thing to say.
hold on, I'm gonna get back to you. Councilor Joe.
I had a question for people that are talking about at a much higher level than this issue. I believe we're talking about Measure 5 and Measure 50, and that idea that people in Oregon don't pay enough taxes and that could be modified or repealed in the future is terrifying to me. And that the city council actually wants to take more property taxes from the people of Oregon, but I understand everyone in Oregon is in the same situation because we live in Oregon and the cities, League of Oregon Cities, everyone, shares their practices, best practices, ideas, learn from each other, glean from each other, and then yet they're all in the same having the same issue is not surprising to me because they all turn to each other for advice. That's my take on it.
Thank you. Okay, everybody's spoken twice.
I haven't spoken. Only once.
You've only spoken once on this?
motion. On this motion.
On this motion? I thought I had it twice.
Karen, do you have?
Let's see. Councilor Roden, then Councilor Martin Willis, then Councilor Core, Councilor Schwarzler, Commissioner Roden, Commissioner Morton. So yeah, it's Councilor Roden did speak twice.
Okay, does anybody else have anything else? Without objection, we're gonna go to the vote here. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And that's Core, Martin Willis, Schwartzler, and Morton. All opposed to the motion.
Opposed.
Joe and Roden. I'm looking right at it, and sorry, the motion passes. I'd like to move on to the resolution. We need to approve the resolution to the state to receive state shared revenues.
I move to approve resolution number 24-1609, a resolution to elect to receive state revenues for fiscal year 2024-25.
Second.
Second? Good. Is there any discussion?
So I just want to say that when we accept state revenue, that just means we're accepting taxes on a state level. And if we're not going to spend our tax money wisely here locally, I'm not going to vote to approve to take in more state money from the state.
Thank you. Anybody else? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Opposed.
Rodents in opposition. Okay, we need to now move, so I'm just checking with staff here. So we've got all the budget things now. We are now down onto the supplemental budget, is that correct?
Yes, Mayor, we've completed budget for 24-25 and supplemental now for 23-24.
Okay, and if someone would, Mr. Moody, would you care to explain this?
Yes, sir. So, Oregon local budget law allows for budget adjustments in the event that things were unanticipated when the initial budget was adopted. So what we have in front of you this evening with this resolution is the adopted general fund budget for 23-24 for finance and human resource departments did not anticipate the amounts that that are going to be required to be expended for legal fees related to the labor negotiations. The level of bank fees, lease and rental costs were not adequately budgeted in the 23-24 year based on actual experience. And utilities costs, electricity costs have been significantly higher through all of our departments. And then in the facilities and vehicle repair replacement fund, there's a really minor over expenditure of personnel services, like less than $100. At this point, that's projected through the end of the year, but in order to comply with local budget law, we're asking for a shift of $500 from materials and services to personnel services through the end of the year, just to give us a little buffer. So if council approves this supplemental budget, what we'll do is we'll recognize an additional $32,000 in general fund income from interest income that was not budgeted, because we've recognized significant revenue over budgeted levels because of higher interest rates. We'll increase appropriations in the finance department, increase appropriations in the human resources department, and then make that transfer from materials and services to personnel services in the facilities, vehicle repair, and replacement.
Would it be fair to characterize this as moving things from, where it's not new money, it's just moving things from one column to the other column so it's in the right place? Would that be a fair characterization?
Yes, with the exception of we are recognizing the additional interest.
Additional interest. Does anybody have additional questions? All in favor of this motion, say,
Yes, thank you. I move to approve
Sorry,
resolution 24-1610 to amend the fiscal year 23-24 adopted budget.
Second.
second by Core, discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Roden is in opposition. Motion carries. Now, we have, as I told you at the beginning, we have an emergency contract that is just arriving on, I'm gonna let staff, who's handling this?
Gerald, I'll handle the main and Gerald will fill in on some of the technical.
Thank you. This is not in your packet.
Right. So, council, I apologize for bringing this to you at the last minute. Last night at about 5:35, I received an email from our attorney indicating that we needed to move forward with an emergency contract award. I was in a meeting until 6:30 last night, so I didn't get it until after 7 o'clock when I got home. First thing this morning, we started working on this. Now, the basis for this emergency contract, many of you are very familiar with C Street and the work that was taking place on C Street. For the first time, I think, ever in your career, Gerald, we have had to stop work due to issues with the contractor. This is a relatively unusual thing. However, there were a number of lines that were hit, and so we had to stop work and terminate the contractor. In order to move forward and have that work done, we have to work with their performance bond agency. And a part of doing that is figuring out how do we move forward to get the project completed. And our attorneys advised us that first, administratively, I have to declare an emergency. You will see that declaration of emergency for public contracting as an attachment, and it outlines all of the facts as they played out for this project. The second step is to bring this to you and have you give me the authority to sign the documents to move forward. Now, the way we're proposing to move forward, because of state procurement law and all of the factors surrounding this, the bonding company coordinated with the next lowest bidder. So the lowest bidder is the one we went with, and that is by state law. The next lowest bidder is Lawson, and the bond company is recommending that we move with Lawson. Our public works director does not have a problem with moving forward with Lawson. Our attorneys do not have a problem with us moving, in fact, they recommended moving forward with this process. The fiscal impact to the city on this is there is no fiscal impact because all of the funds that will be paid by the city were already budgeted for this project. If there are any increases, then the surety, the performance bond company, will pay the city the difference in contract prices in exchange for the release. Now, one of the reasons this is an emergency is because we have to move quickly. This contract and this project were put into a time frame to make sure that it was done before school gets back in session. Because we do not want our elementary school children walking by there, going through an active construction site. And I don't know about your folks' elementary school child, but my son was known for stopping at construction and trying to get in there and see what was going on. And I can only imagine there are other children like that. So we're trying to get this done as quickly as we can. And therefore, with Lawson being able to do it, if we can get them working on it immediately, we can get it done before we have a safety risk to our kids. So what we're asking is that the council would provide me with the authority to sign and any associated documents to move this contract forward.
Questions for the presenter, please? Everybody, okay, please do.
Have you been in contact with Lawson Excavation Corps to see that they are ready to move on this job? Joe?
They provided a bid to the surety, which then forwarded it to us, and they said they can get to work on it and finish it by the original construction deadline.
Please.
Are we able to levy any kind of penalty on the previous company for the issues that they caused?
So The original amount of the contract will end up going to Lawson. Any additional cost is paid by the surety. The existing contractor gets, or the previous contractor gets nothing.
I have a follow-up question related to what you were talking about, Councilor Court. We had a lot of hassle that had to go through because we had to do a water notice and anything. Is there any reimbursement that the city gets, or the difficulties that people had, because I know some businesses had actual losses? Is there anything that, is there anything for the city to recoup? Is there anything for anybody else to recoup?
So the city can recover the costs associated with the water line break, which we put an invoice to that and charged it to the project. Also, the crews went out and put in temporary paving to keep the gravel from spreading around. We back charged the project for that. And there's also money in there for the engineers who have to reprint new contracts for Lawson to sign and their time to review and get it into us. So we have already given an amount to our attorney of what would make us whole on that. Anything outside of that contract with the city and the contractor and the surety, there isn't.
Okay, additional questions, please.
More of a statement. I just want to, for transparency, my house is on C Street and is impacted by this project.
Along with everybody else
I just
on
want to
C
be
Street.
clear, yeah.
Okay, everybody else okay? This is an action item, and I appreciate staff hustling to get this in front of us so that this work can move forward. If someone would make the motion, I'd appreciate it.
I move to approve the replacement emergency contract with Lawson Excavation Corp. in the amount of $600,978 and authorize the city manager to sign the contract, surety, lease, and all associated costs.
I have a second by, was it Core? Thank you.
It's fine.
One of them, okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Motion carries. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is that we're going to adjourn the city council meeting, and then we're going to open the urban renewal meeting. Without objection, city council meeting is now adjourned. I'm now opening the urban renewal agency. Everybody who's here is here, Karen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. You have minutes from a year ago, June of 2023. Is that okay with everybody?
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve. You okay, Karen? That was Core and, was it Schwartzer, thank you. All in favor, aye. I think you get to talk about the budget for the Urban Renewal Agency.
Yeah, basically the budget before you this evening is the budget that was approved by the budget committee. There are no further amendments proposed by staff.
And the use of these funds are,
Sorry, there's debt service. Basically, the budget includes debt service costs from both the debt service fund and the urban renewal projects fund to cover loans that were used to build the projects.
Great. Additional questions? All in favor? Did I get, wait a minute, I was rolling here. There's a public hearing. Does anybody want to say anything about the urban renewal budget? I don't see anybody stepping up. This is pretty rote, I get it. Okay, I'm now closing that public hearing, and this is an action item.
I move to approve resolution number 2024-01, a resolution adopting the Independence Urban Renewal District budget for fiscal year 2024-2025 in the sum of $1,921,567 to approve appropriations in the amount of $1,921,567 and to declare and certify the maximum tax increment that may be raised.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by Schwartzler. Saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. going to do council announcements that need to be made at this point. Does anybody have council announcements they need to make?
Mayor, do we need to close the URA and go back to the council?
We have council announcements here on, in the Urban Renewal District,
Okay.
so I'm going to just kind of omnibus it.
All right.
I have announcements.
Please.
The gate this last week provided helmets and bike repair for kids of Month Independence. I thought it was an amazing event. I went to see it, and actually my son got his bike tire fixed, and so it was pretty cool that they did that. And they did a community bike ride afterwards, and it was great to see everybody out and biking around.
Thank you.
I have one
Councilor
also.
Morton?
The Independence Downtown Association on Friday afternoon from 3 to 5 p.m. down at the top of Riverview Park is putting on the second annual last day of school celebration. Any kids who are done with going to school and there's no limit, well, I don't think it includes college, but no limitation from public school age, can come down and get all kinds of stuff for free. It is also the launch point of the Independence Library's summer reading program.
Additional announcements. I'd just like to make a comment. I want to thank some people. I want to thank the staff for working really hard for the last 6 months on the budget. People, for a variety of reasons, I recognize the effort that's put forth. I also want to thank, I know Bill's here as chair of our budget committee, and I really appreciate him and all the other people who have served on our budget committee that went through all the work, sweat and tears to look at things. We come to different conclusions sometimes, but everybody worked hard trying to make our community a better place, and it is not an easy task. I also appreciate our counselors. Nobody gets paid for this, and that's one of the things that around the state, there are only, I think, 5 mayors that get any sort of payment, and I think only the council people in Portland. But everybody else is a volunteer, and they're working to try to make our community a better place. There are lots of different ways to get there. There are lots of opinions, and we throw out a variety of different ideas. None of us gets all that we want, but we're all trying to make this community a better place. And I really want to say thank you. I'm not going to go around and do the group hug. Gerald's going, oh, thank God he's not going to do the group hug. So anyway, and I really appreciate it. And so thanks, folks. I hope you have a pleasant evening. Without objection, we're adjourned.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.